Part we're going to talk about mechanical digestion. If you recall from the other two videos, we talked about mechanical digestion happens in your mouth, in your stomach, and in your intestines. The type of mechanical digestion that happens is different in the mouth versus the stomach, but they are both a muscle or a grinding with the teeth type of digestion, where it's actually like a mechanics type of deal versus a chemical. There's a short little video here that I would like to see if I can maybe pop up, and it's not going to work, so we're going to move on to the next. Chewing. Chewing happens in your mouth. Food is initially broken down in the mouth by the grinding action of teeth. This is called chewing or mastication. You want to write down that the food initially, hamburger goes in, and after it passes through the first cycle of chewing in your mouth, it does not look like a hamburger anymore. The tongue pushes the food towards the back of the throat, where it travels down the esophagus as a bolus. You've heard that term already in the last two videos. The tongue is there in the mouth to help with chewing and aiding, pushing that food, now called a bolus, back towards your throat, down towards the esophagus. The epiglottis prevents the bolus from entering the trachea. The trachea is part of that respiratory system we learned last week, and the epiglottis is that little flap that covers the larynx and the esophagus to prevent that food and water to go down your respiratory tract. The churning happens in your stomach. So think of it like a churning motion where the stomach is kind of grinding and turning together. It's like crunching your food together. The stomach lining contains muscles which physically squeeze and mix the food with strong digestive juices. So when we talk about digestive system, we'll use the term juices a lot. And that's the churning motion we have, where the stomach is physically squeezing the food to break it down even further with some really strong acidic chemical digestion. Food is digested within the stomach for several hours and is turned into a creamy paste called chyme. That chyme then passes from the stomach to the small and large intestines, but first it has to get digested in the stomach with mechanical and chemical. Eventually the chyme enters the small intestine, specifically the duodenum, where the absorption will occur. So like I said, from the stomach, that chyme turns the corner, heads into the small intestine, where we'll start absorbing all the nutrients for our cells to use as energy. So far to recap, chewing is in the mouth, mechanical. Churning is in the stomach, mechanical. Now let's switch to chemical digestion of the upper GI tract, your upper digestive tract. We have a picture here of your stomach with nice stomach acids and gastric juices in here. And then you have over here this diagram of an enzyme function. So enzymes are meant to build things or break down or speed up reactions. So in this case, our enzymes are there to break down foods into simpler forms so that our body can absorb it. Stomach acid, I'm not going to read all this to you. You do need to write this part, the first one, down. The stomach contains gastric glands, which release digestive acids to create a low pH environment. So 1 is like super acidic, burning through things, where 2 is really low and really acidic, and that happens in your stomach. So your stomach has really acidic juices in there that helps break down, especially proteins in your stomach. The stomach lining contains a mucous membrane, and without that mucous membrane, we get something called ulcers. So if you've ever heard of people getting ulcers, that's generally that mucous membrane on the inside of your stomach is gone, parts of it, and that acid that's in your stomach is burning away at your stomach lining. It's very painful. It is curable and fixable, but generally from eating a lot of hot stuff or drinking a lot of soda can trigger ulcers, a lot with stress as well. Over here we're going to move to bile. Bile is the liver. In the liver, it produces a fluid called bile, which is stored and concentrated within the gallbladder, prior to release into the intestine. So bile is another type of chemical digestion which is used to help break down fats. Right here it's called fat globules, and to make them smaller so that our body can absorb them for use or for excretion to leave the body. Enzymes here, like I said before, they're there to speed up the rate of a chemical reaction or to break down. So in the digestive process, we're speeding up the chemical reaction, allowing our body to break down the carbohydrates and break down the more complex things into simpler things so our body can absorb it and use for energy. Lastly, the two terms I want you to know is called peristalsis and bolus. And I've said those many times already. So peristalsis is the principal mechanism of movement in the esophagus, although it is also occurs both in the stomach and in your gut. So peristalsis is that action where your esophagus or your stomach is squeezing either the bolus or your chyme or your food to move it from one place to the other. Food is moved unidirectionally or in one direction along the esophagus, stomach, into your intestines, and then out to your rectum and anus. So food is not meant to come back up, and if you do and you throw up or you vomit, it's some kind of reflex that has caused your stomach to reflux that food or drink that you just took in. Over here, bolus, after food is chewed and broken down with mechanical and chemical digestion, it leaves the mouth and pharynx as a bolus. So as soon as you swallow that, and it passes your epiglottis heading into the esophagus, that becomes what we call a bolus now. A bolus is heading down the esophagus into your stomach. So let's review a little bit here just really quickly. We have mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion happens in the mouth and the stomach. The chemical digestion also happens both in the mouth and the stomach. We will continue this discussion on Lab Day. Lab Day, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what happens in your mouth and actually try out some of these amylase and enzyme actions that you have in your saliva. And we'll do that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week.